Good evening, I'm Laura Lee.
And I'm Dan Wolf. Thanks for joining us. In July, St. Louis County leadership warned of a possible hike to property taxes as federal funding was being slashed.
This week, the Board of Commissioners giving initial approval to a big increase in the county's maximum property tax levy in order to balance a difficult budget year.
In Northern News Now, Sophia Lauber joins us live to share what she's hearing from commissioners, one in particular calling out some others. Hey, Sophia.
Yeah, I'm here outside the St. Louis County Courthouse where that vote took place, and commissioners who voted for the increase are telling me that's just what had to happen as costs rise and federal funds are cut. Collectively, St. Louis County property owners could be paying up to roughly $200 million in property taxes in 2026, a 12.4% increase from last year.
This is an incredibly hard budgeting year, and other levels of government are using words like cost shift or sharing the burden. We have to share that with homeowners.
The levy was given an initial approval in a 6-1 vote on Tuesday. Commissioner Keith Nelson highlighting those federal and state cuts, as well as rising costs in health insurance, staff salaries, and inflation as contributing factors.
To maintain the level of services necessary in this community, to continue to deliver for the residents of this community, that number allows us to continue to do just that.
Commissioner Ashley Grimm, representing Duluth, was a lone vote against the levy, arguing money from, quote, low priority areas could be used to offset the levy or pay for services she views as high priority, like child care.
What makes it a non-starter for me is the millions that are spent on what I see as pet projects.
Specifically, she called out a county scholarship program that Nelson is looking to build an endowment for.
In a very tough budget year, building an endowment with over $2 million, those kind of things aren't a top priority.
Nelson, who represents part of the Iron Range, defends the program and says it doesn't involve taxpayer dollars as it is funded by mineral royalties.
How dare she try to spend the ore royalties that come from my Iron Range that in mining that she does not support.
A final vote on the levy will take place on September 9th. Once that maximum levy is locked in on the 9th, the Board of Commissioners will then have through December to finalize their budget. Live in Duluth, Sophia Lauber, Northern News Now.